I woke up in a dark, cramped cell, the coldness of the concrete floor seeping into my bones. My heart raced as I blinked against the dim light filtering through the tiny barred window above me. The air was thick with the smell of dampness and something else, something metallic. I tried to sit up, but a wave of nausea washed over me, and I leaned back against the wall, taking in my surroundings. What had happened? My mind was a jigsaw puzzle, pieces scattered and missing. I could faintly remember the screeching of tires, the blaring horn, and then nothing. Just darkness. Panic began to claw at my chest. I forced myself to breathe deeply, but it was difficult when every breath felt like inhaling despair. Suddenly, a distant sound broke through the silence, a chorus of laughter, sharp and mocking. It echoed through the narrow corridors like a twisted melody, sending a shiver down my spine. I glanced around the cell, noticing the jagged scratches on the walls, as if something had clawed its way to escape. I was alone, yet I could feel a presence lurking in the shadows, a weight that made the air around me feel even heavier. "Hey, you okay in there?" a voice called from the cell next door, breaking my reverie. I turned my head, squinting into the gloom. A man, thin and disheveled, leaned against the bars of his own cell, shadows dancing across his face. His eyes were wide, almost wild, as if he had seen things that had broken him. I don't know," I stammered, struggling to find my voice. "Where am I?" "You're in hell, my friend," he chuckled darkly. "Welcome to the Forgotten Penitentiary. You'll get used to it if it doesn't eat you alive first." Forgotten Penitentiary? The name felt foreign on my tongue. "What do you mean?" He leaned closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a dangerous secret. "It's not just a prison. There are things here, things that watch us. The Sentinels, they keep us in check. They feed on our fear." "Sentinels?" I echoed, my heart pounding louder in my chest. "What are you talking about?" "Creatures," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "They guard this place like hawks. If you try to escape, they'll come for you. Believe me, I've seen it happen. They're shadows, but more than that, they're your worst nightmares brought to life." I felt a cold chill creep up my spine at the thought. The laughter I had heard earlier echoed again, this time accompanied by something else, a low, guttural growl that rumbled through the walls. I pressed my back against the cold concrete, trying to make sense of it all. "Why are you here?" I asked, desperate to shift the focus away from the creeping dread. "Me? Oh, just a little mistake," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "Drove drunk one night, took out a family in the process. Now I'm stuck here, paying for my sins, like everyone else." I swallowed hard, his words piercing through the fog of my confusion. Guilt washed over me like a wave, and for a moment my fragmented memories flickered back to the accident. My friend, where was he? I could feel the weight of his absence pressing down on me. "What about you? What brought you here?" the man asked, his gaze piercing into me. I don't remember," I admitted, the frustration bubbling to the surface. "I was in a car accident. I think my friend died." He studied me for a moment, his expression shifting from curiosity to understanding. "You'll have to confront that, you know. It's the only way to survive this place. You have to face your demons or they'll consume you." I felt a lump form in my throat, the weight of his words settling heavy on my chest. I didn't want to think about what happened, about the guilt that gnawed at me. Suddenly the atmosphere changed. The air grew colder and the laughter faded, replaced by a tense silence that felt charged with electricity. I instinctively leaned closer to the bars, straining to hear anything that might indicate the presence of the Sentinels. A flicker of movement caught my eye, and I could have sworn I saw a shadow flit past the end of the corridor. "Did you see that?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. The man's eyes widened and his body tensed. "They're coming," he hissed. "You need to hide." Before I could react, I heard the sound of scuffling feet and the distant clanging of metal. The dread settled over me like a heavy blanket. I ducked behind a column in the center of the cell block, my heart racing as I peered out to see what was happening. A figure emerged from the shadows, a prisoner, his face twisted in terror. "Help me. Please," he screamed, his voice echoing through the corridor. In that moment, I saw them for the first time. The Sentinels. They came forth like living shadows, their forms shifting and writhing, barely human. The air grew thick with their presence, and I could feel the temperature drop even further. The prisoner made a desperate dash for freedom, but the sentinels moved with a fluid grace, closing in on him like a pack of wolves. "No, no," he shouted, but it was too late. They descended upon him, engulfing him in darkness. I could only watch in horror as his screams were silenced, swallowed by the shadows. My breath caught in my throat, and I pressed myself against the wall, praying they wouldn't notice me. My mind raced. I had to get out. I had to escape this nightmare before it was too late. "Lucas," the man from the neighboring cell called out, his voice urgent. "You have to get out of here. They're here for us." I turned to him, fear coursing through my veins. "How?" "Find Emily," he said, his voice lowering to a whisper. "She's the key. She knows how to survive this place. But you have to hurry." I hesitated for a moment, the weight of his words settling over me. I had to find Emily, whoever she was. Time was running out. As I made my way deeper into the darkened halls, I could still hear the echoes of the prisoner's screams in my mind, mingling with the laughter that taunted me from the shadows. I had to confront whatever lay ahead. I couldn't let the Sentinels win. Not when I still had a chance to escape and find out who I was meant to be. I stumbled into a dimly lit courtyard, the heavy air thick with an unsettling silence. The walls seemed to close in around me, their jagged edges illuminated by a flickering overhead light that cast eerie shadows, mirroring the turmoil within me. I spotted her, Emily, leaning against the cold concrete wall, her expression inscrutable. "Hey," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, as if the very act of speaking might awaken something sinister lurking in the shadows. She turned to me, her eyes piercing through the gloom, and offered a small, enigmatic smile. "You're alive. I was beginning to worry you'd become another lost soul." "Lost soul?" I echoed, a shiver running down my spine. "What do you mean?" Emily pushed herself off the wall and took a step closer. "This place, it has a way of trapping people, not just physically. It feeds on your fears and regrets, Lucas. You've already felt it, haven't you?" I swallowed hard, the memory of my friend's face flashing before my eyes, a haunting reminder of the accident that had landed me here. I don't remember much. Just fragments." "Good," she replied, her tone shifting to something more serious. "It's better that way. But you will remember. You'll have to face it, just like the others." "Face what?" I asked, a knot tightening in my stomach. "The Sentinels," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They're the guardians of this prison, but they're not just here to keep us locked up. They're here to ensure we confront our pasts." I shuddered at the thought of those creatures, the shadows that had nearly consumed me when I first arrived. "But what do they want from us?" "They want us to see our sins, to feel the weight of our choices," she explained, her gaze unwavering. "There's a story that goes with this place, a pact made by a famous prisoner long ago. It was supposed to grant him power, but instead it cursed everyone who followed." "A pact?" I repeated, intrigued despite the fear gnawing at me. "What kind of pact?" Emily's eyes darkened, and she glanced around as if ensuring no one else was listening. "He traded his soul for something he thought would save him, but in doing so, he condemned everyone else to suffer in this wretched place. The Sentinels are the manifestation of that curse. They're drawn to regret, to guilt. They thrive on it." I felt a shiver run through me, the weight of her words settling in. "So what do we do? How do we escape?" "By confronting our own demons," she said matter-of-factly. "You have to understand your past, Lucas. Only then can you break free from it." "Why do I have to do this alone?" I asked, frustration bubbling to the surface. "Can't we work together?" Emily nodded, but a flicker of sadness crossed her face. "It's not that simple. Everyone has their own path to walk, but you're not alone in the sense that you have others who understand. You'll find that many of us are here for similar reasons." "Like you?" I pressed, wanting to uncover her story. She hesitated, her gaze drifting away. "Yes, like me. I've made mistakes, Lucas. Mistakes that I can't take back. But I'm here to find a way to forgive myself. To be free." Her words resonated within me, stirring the guilt I had been trying to bury since the accident. "And what about me? What did I do to end up here?" "I can't tell you that," she replied softly. "That's for you to discover. But believe me, it's there. You just need to dig deep." As I stood there, an invisible weight pressing down on my chest, my mind was flooded with memories of the crash, the sound of metal crunching, the screams. I gritted my teeth, trying to push the images away. I don't want to remember. Then you'll be trapped here forever, she said bluntly. You'll become one of the lost souls that wander these halls, unable to move on. I can't let that happen, I murmured, a newfound determination igniting within me. I need to escape. Emily's expression softened. Then you need to start facing your fears. It's the only way forward. Just as I was about to respond, a chilling scream echoed through the courtyard, sending a jolt of terror through me. The sound was followed by the unmistakable rustle of something moving in the shadows. Instinctively, I took a step closer to Emily, my heart racing. Is that one of the Sentinels? I asked, my voice trembling. She nodded, her demeanor shifting back to the cautious observer. We should be careful. They can sense fear, and they'll come for you if you let them. Let them? I echoed, incredulous. How can I possibly not feel afraid? By accepting it, she said, her voice steady. You have to acknowledge that fear is part of being alive. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. I clenched my fists, trying to channel my anxiety into something productive. What if I can't face it? What if I fail? Then you will have learned something, she replied. Failure is just another step toward understanding. Trust me, Lucas, you're stronger than you think. Her words hung in the air, a lifeline amid the chaos that surrounded us. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself as the echoes of laughter and distant cries grew louder. Okay, I breathed, determination coursing through me. I'll try. I'll face whatever I have to, for myself and for my friend. Emily smiled, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. That's the spirit. Just remember, you're not alone in this. We'll face it together, as long as you don't lose your way. With newfound resolve, I nodded, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. Whatever awaited me, I was ready to confront it. I just needed to find the strength within myself to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. As the shadows loomed around us, I realized that the real battle was only just beginning. But for the first time since I had woken up in this hellish prison, I felt a flicker of hope. The cold air inside the penitentiary clung to my skin, sending a shiver down my spine as I stepped into the dimly lit corridor. Emily walked beside me, her expression a mix of determination and fear. We had just come from the chaotic energy of the prison yard, where shadows loomed, and the laughter of other inmates echoed dismally in the distance. Now, in the hushed stillness, I could hear the faintest whisper of my own heartbeat, a reminder of my resolve to find a way out of this nightmare. Do you really think we'll find something in here? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to disturb the unsettling silence that surrounded us. Emily paused, glancing over her shoulder as if the walls themselves were listening. I believe we will. There are stories hidden in this place, stories of pain, regret, and darkness. You just have to know where to look. I nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at me. What if we found only more despair? But I was desperate for answers, desperate to understand why I was here, trapped in this realm of shadows and demons. As we moved deeper into the corridor, I noticed the flickering lights overhead, casting grotesque shadows that danced menacingly across the walls. Look at this, Emily said suddenly, stopping in front of a small door, partially ajar. I leaned in closer, and the scent of dampness and decay hit me. The darkness beyond seemed to promise secrets. We entered cautiously, and what lay before us was a room cluttered with forgotten possessions. Items that once belonged to the lost souls who had inhabited this place. Old photographs, rusted trinkets, and torn letters littered the floor. Each object felt like a fragment of a life that had once been vibrant, now reduced to mere remnants of sorrow. Each of these tells a story, Emily murmured, picking up a tarnished locket. This belonged to someone who loved fiercely. She opened it, revealing a faded picture of a couple smiling, their eyes full of hope. What do you think happened to them? I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Maybe they were torn apart by the very things we're facing now, I said, my voice trembling slightly. Maybe they never got to say goodbye. She looked at me, her expression softening. That's the curse of this place. It feeds on our regrets and turns them into our prison. I turned away, feeling the weight of her words settle heavily on my shoulders. I need to understand what brought me here, I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. I can't shake the feeling that I'm being punished for something. Emily stepped closer, her voice low and steady. You're not alone in that. Many here are prisoners of their own making, haunted by choices they regret. What is it that haunts you, Lucas? Her gaze pierced through me, and I felt exposed. I hesitated before answering, unsure of how to articulate the chaotic thoughts swirling in my mind. My friend died in the accident. I was driving, I confessed, my throat tightening. I should have been more careful. I should have. You should have what? Emily interrupted, her tone sharp yet compassionate. You should have saved him? You're not responsible for everything that happens, Lucas. Sometimes life takes a turn that's beyond our control. But it was my decision to get behind the wheel, I said, the weight of guilt pressing down on me. I could have prevented it. She sighed, shaking her head. You need to let go of that guilt. It's like a chain, binding you to this place. Until you confront it, you'll remain trapped here, just like the rest of us. I turned away, the words echoing in my mind. How do I confront it? How do I move on? Emily's eyes softened, and she looked around the room, as if searching for an answer in the debris of lost lives. Maybe we can find something here that will help you. Something that reveals the truth about what happened. We began to sift through the items scattered on the floor, and I came across a journal, its cover worn and tattered. Hey, look at this, I called, holding it up. The pages were yellowed, but the handwriting was still legible. It belonged to a man named Thomas, a former inmate who documented his days in this wretched place. Read it, Emily urged, moving closer to me. It might give us insight. I flipped through the pages, and as I read, a story unfolded, one filled with despair, but also hints of hope. Thomas had written about the Sentinels, the creatures that haunted the prison, feeding on the fears and regrets of the inmates. He spoke of a ritual that could be performed to confront these demons, but it required facing one's past head-on. Listen to this, I said, reading aloud. To escape the darkness that binds you, you must confront the shadows within. Only through acceptance can one hope to break free. Emily nodded, her eyes glimmering with understanding. It's about facing our fears and accepting what we've done. It's a path to redemption. I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me, but it was quickly overshadowed by the weight of my guilt. What if I can't? What if I'm too far gone? She placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. You won't know until you try. We're in this together, remember? I've found my own demons to face, and I'm not going to let you do this alone. I took a deep breath, contemplating her words. What if I finally confront what happened that night? What if I can't forgive myself? Then you'll have to learn to live with it. She replied firmly. But first, you need to face it. Only then can you begin to heal. The room felt charged with energy, as if the spirits of those who once inhabited it were urging us onward. What if we find a way to confront the Sentinels together? I suggested, the thought both terrifying and exhilarating. Emily smiled, a glimmer of hope sparking in her eyes. That's the spirit. We'll search for more clues, and we'll face them together. But first, we need to find out where the ritual can be performed. As we continued to explore the room, I stumbled upon a tattered piece of parchment, its edges frayed with time. Emily, look at this, I exclaimed, carefully unfolding it. The symbols and words scrawled across the page seemed to pulse with energy. This could be it, she said, leaning in closer to examine it. These symbols, they're related to the old rituals. If we can decipher this, it might lead us to a way to confront the Sentinels. I felt a rush of adrenaline. Let's figure it out. We have to do this, together. But as we worked through the cryptic symbols and their meanings, the shadows in the room shifted, and a chill swept through the air. I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. The Sentinels were lurking, watching our every move. Emily, I said, my voice trembling slightly. Do you feel that? She nodded, her expression turning serious. We need to be careful. They can sense our fear. I clenched my fists, trying to suppress the rising panic within me. I won't let them control me, not anymore. Good, she replied, her voice steady. Remember, the key is acceptance. If we confront our fears, we can weaken their hold on us. As we deciphered the parchment, I felt a strange sense of clarity washing over me. This journey was more than just a physical escape. It was about confronting the demons within us. And I realized that perhaps, just perhaps, I had the strength to forgive myself. With newfound determination, I looked at Emily. We're gonna get through this. Together. She smiled, and for the first time since waking in this nightmare, I felt a flicker of hope. We were no longer just prisoners. We were warriors, ready to face the shadows that threatened to consume us. And as we continued our search, I felt the chains of guilt slowly beginning to loosen, allowing me to step closer to the light of redemption. The air was thick with a damp, earthy smell as Lucas and Emily stepped into the long-abandoned block of cells. The flickering light from a single bulb overhead cast eerie shadows on the crumbling walls, and Lucas felt an inexplicable chill run down his spine. He glanced at Emily, who seemed unfazed by the oppressive atmosphere. Her eyes darted around, taking in every detail, every crack in the walls, as if they held secrets only she could decipher. "Are you sure this is the right place?" Lucas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've heard stories about this block. They say it's cursed." Emily turned to him, a small smile playing on her lips, but her eyes held a seriousness that made Lucas uneasy. "Cursed? Maybe. But sometimes, curses reveal the truth. We need to find out what's really going on here." He nodded, despite the knot of apprehension in his stomach. They moved deeper into the block, the echo of their footsteps mingling with the distant sounds of the penitentiary, muffled cries, the scraping of metal, and the ever-present laughter of the Sentinels, hauntingly close yet painfully far. As they walked, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He glanced back, half expecting to see one of those dreadful creatures lurking in the shadows, but there was nothing, just the dark, empty corridor stretching behind them. "I don't like this place," he admitted, his voice low. "It feels wrong." Emily stopped and turned to him. "I know it's unsettling, but sometimes we have to face the darkness to find the light. Remember the diary we found? It mentioned the heart of the penitentiary. This block is part of it." Lucas took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart. "You're right. We can't turn back now." They ventured further, the darkness closing in around them like a suffocating blanket. They stumbled upon a cell that was slightly ajar, the rusty door creaking ominously as they pushed it open. Inside, the walls were covered in strange markings, symbols that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. Lucas stepped closer, his fingers brushing against the cold stone, trying to make sense of the chaotic lines. "What do you think it means?" he asked, kneeling down to examine the markings more closely. Emily leaned over his shoulder, her breath tickling his ear. "It looks like some sort of ritualistic writing. I've seen similar symbols in old texts. They're often used to bind or summon something." A shiver ran down Lucas's spine. "Summon? Like the Sentinels?" "Exactly," Emily replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "But it's not just them. It's also about the emotions tied to this place. The regrets, the pain, it's all mixed together." Lucas stood up abruptly, feeling a wave of nausea wash over him. "I can't help but think that we're walking into a trap." "Maybe," Emily conceded, her eyes narrowing in thought. "Or maybe it's a chance to understand what we're dealing with. If we can learn about the pact that brought the Sentinels here, we might find a way to break it." As they continued their exploration, they came across another cell, this one more ornate than the others. It had an intricate design carved into the door, which was slightly ajar, inviting them in. Lucas hesitated, glancing at Emily, who nodded encouragingly. Inside, the air felt charged with a strange energy, and Lucas could almost hear the echo of whispered conversations from long ago. In the center of the room lay an ancient book, its pages yellowed and brittle with age. He stepped forward, his heart racing as he reached down to pick it up. "This must be the diary of the famous prisoner," Emily breathed, peering over his shoulder. "The one who made the pact." Lucas opened the book carefully, the spine cracking slightly as he turned the pages. "Listen to this," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. "It talks about a ritual performed in this very block. The prisoner traded his soul for power, but in doing so he cursed everyone who followed. The Sentinels were born from his regret and despair." Emily's eyes widened. "This is it. If we can figure out how to undo this pact, we might stand a chance against the Sentinels." Lucas's fingers continued to skim the brittle pages, and he found a passage that made his heart race. "It says here that the only way to confront the Sentinels is to face your own fears. Each of them feeds on the pain and regret of the prisoners. To defeat them, you must confront what binds you to this place." "What does that mean for us?" Emily asked, her brow furrowing in thought. "I don't know yet. Lucas admitted, feeling the weight of his own guilt pressing down on him. But I think I need to confront what I did. The accident, my friend. Emily placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You're not alone in this, Lucas. We'll face it together. Whatever it is, we'll find a way through. He looked into her eyes, finding strength in her unwavering gaze. But as he turned back to the book, a sudden gust of wind swept through the room, slamming the door shut behind them. The sound echoed like thunder, and Lucas's heart raced. Did you feel that? He asked, panic rising in his chest. Yes, Emily said, her voice tense. We need to leave. Now. But before they could move, the shadows around them deepened, swirling into forms that began to coalesce into the familiar shapes of the Sentinels. Their eyes glowed with a menacing light, and Lucas felt a chill race through him. Run! Emily shouted, but his feet felt rooted to the ground, paralyzed by fear. Lucas, she screamed, pulling at him. We have to go. Suddenly, the door that had just sealed shut creaked open slightly, revealing a sliver of light outside. The Sentinels loomed closer, their grotesque forms shifting in the dim light, and Lucas felt the weight of his guilt pressing down on him like a vice. Face us! One of the Sentinels hissed, its voice a chilling whisper that echoed in his mind. Face your truth. With a surge of adrenaline, Lucas broke free from his paralysis and bolted toward the door, Emily right behind him. They burst into the corridor, the sound of their footsteps echoing against the stone walls as they ran, the ominous laughter of the Sentinels ringing in their ears. Lucas, what did you see in there? Emily panted as they raced down the corridor. I don't know, he gasped, his heart pounding. But I think we're closer to understanding the Sentinels. We need to keep searching. Emily nodded, determination etched on her face. We will figure it out. Together. As they fled deeper into the bowels of the penitentiary, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that the true battle was just beginning. The shadows were closing in, and he knew that to truly escape, he would have to confront the demons he had tried so hard to forget. The air felt heavy around me as I paced the dimly lit confines of our makeshift refuge, my thoughts racing like wild horses. Emily had been my tether to sanity in this godforsaken place, but now uncertainty gnawed at me. I turned to her, my voice barely a whisper. Emily, we need to come up with a plan. We can't stay here much longer. She looked up from the floor, her eyes reflecting a mixture of determination and fear. I know, Lucas, but escaping isn't just about finding a way out. It's about confronting what's inside us. Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, I felt as if I were staring into the abyss of her soul, a darkness that mirrored my own. What do you mean? I furrowed my brow, trying to comprehend the weight of her statement. I didn't do anything wrong. I was in that accident. It wasn't my fault. Emily stood up, brushing the dust off her pants. That's where you're wrong. We're all here because of something we did or failed to do. It's not just a physical prison, Lucas. It's a reflection of our guilt. Her voice was steady, but there was a tremor beneath the surface. I shook my head, the tightness in my chest growing. I can't think about that right now. I need to focus on getting out of here. The memories of the crash flooded my mind, fragmented images of laughter, then screams, and finally silence. I just want to see my friend again. I can't lose anyone else. Sometimes you have to let go to move forward, she said softly, her gaze piercing through my defenses. I made my mistakes, and they haunt me. That's why I'm here. There was an intensity in her eyes that made me shiver. What about you, Lucas? What keeps you here? The question struck like a bolt of lightning. I wanted to deflect it, to dismiss it as if it were a mere annoyance, but something deep within me stirred. I don't know, I admitted, my voice trembling. I keep seeing my friend's face. I couldn't save him. I should have been driving, not him. The words fell from my lips like stones, heavy and burdensome. Then you need to confront that, Emily urged, her voice rising with urgency. Face your guilt. Only then can you find peace. Her words resonated within me, a call to arms against the demons that lurk both outside and in. What if I can't? I asked, my voice cracking. What if I'm not strong enough? Fear gripped my heart, and I felt a cold sweat forming on my brow. You are strong enough, Lucas, she insisted, stepping closer, her presence a steady flame in the darkness. You just have to believe it. Remember, those Sentinels, she hesitated, her expression darkening, They feed on our fears. They thrive in our pain. The more we resist facing our pasts, the stronger they become. I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat making it difficult to speak. I don't want to face it. I don't want to relive that night. The screams, the guilt. My voice lowered to a whisper, as if speaking the words would summon the darkness I feared. Then you'll remain a prisoner, she said firmly, her eyes unwavering. You'll be trapped here, just like the others, consumed by your own shadows. But if you confront it, if you let go of the guilt, you can find freedom. I felt a flicker of hope beneath the crushing weight of despair, but it was quickly extinguished by the realization of what lay ahead. But what if I lose? What if confronting it only makes things worse? I couldn't help but feel my heart racing at the thought of facing the Sentinels, of being swallowed by the very darkness I feared. Then you fight, Emily replied, a fierce determination igniting in her gaze. You fight with everything you have. You're not alone in this, we can face them together. Her words were a lifeline, a reminder that there was still strength in unity. But deep down, I could feel the weight of my doubts pressing down on me. What if you're wrong? What if I can't forgive myself? I don't even know if I deserve to be free, I confessed, the vulnerability spilling from me like a broken dam. Emily stepped back, her expression softening. You do deserve it, Lucas. We all do. We might have made mistakes, but that doesn't define us. It's what we do now that matters. As the echoes of her words settled within me, I felt a gnawing emptiness grow. Do you ever think about what you did? I asked hesitantly, unsure if I was overstepping a boundary. What keeps you here? Her eyes flickered with something akin to pain. I hurt someone. A mistake that cost a life, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Every day I think about it. Every moment I feel their absence. I was selfish, and now I'm paying the price. Emily? I started, but she held up her hand, silencing me. No, Lucas, I need you to understand. I have to face it just like you do. We can't let our pasts destroy our futures. The strength in her voice was both empowering and terrifying. A chill ran down my spine, and I felt a sudden rush of fear as the reality of our situation crashed down upon me. I glanced toward the shadows that loomed near the cell door, feeling their presence like a weight pressing against my chest. What if they come for us? Then we stand together, she said resolutely, her eyes fierce. We don't let them tear us apart. We confront our fears, and we fight back. Just as she finished speaking, a low growl echoed through the corridor, sending shivers down my spine. I could feel the air grow colder, the shadows thickening. They're close, I whispered, my heart racing. Emily's gaze hardened. Stay focused, Lucas. We can't give in to fear. Remember what I said. They thrive on it. You have to confront your guilt. Before I could respond, the ground beneath us trembled, and the sound of laughter echoed ominously, chilling my blood. My heart raced as I realized the Sentinels were near, their presence overwhelming. I could almost feel their cold, clammy breath against my skin. Lucas, Emily shouted, her voice cutting through the tension. Now is the time. You need to face it. Confront your past, or we'll lose everything. With a sudden rush of adrenaline, I took a step back, my mind swirling with images of that fateful night. The crash, the sirens, my friend's face twisted in pain. I could feel the weight of guilt pressing down on me, suffocating and relentless. Emily, I began. But the words caught in my throat as the shadows morphed into something more tangible, more menacing. The Sentinels were coming, their laughter echoing like a death knell. Face it, Lucas, she urged, her voice breaking through the chaos. You have to face it now. Don't let them take you. In that moment, I felt a surge of resolve. I couldn't let fear dictate my fate. I had to confront my past, to face the guilt that had shackled me. I'll do it, I shouted, the determination burning within me. I'll confront it. But before I could gather my thoughts, darkness enveloped me. The Sentinels were upon us, their twisted forms creeping closer, whispering the secrets of my failures. You don't belong here, they hissed, their voices a cacophony of despair. And then, just like that, I collapsed into a void of darkness, the weight of my guilt dragging me down, and I felt Emily's presence fade away. The last thing I heard was her voice, echoing through the abyss. Fight, Lucas, fight for us. The air in the penitentiary felt thick, almost suffocating, as I wandered through the dimly lit corridors, my mind racing with thoughts of Emily and the Sentinels. I had to find a way to confront them, but the fear still gripped my heart like a vice. I was lost in my thoughts when I stumbled upon a group of prisoners huddled together in an abandoned section of the prison. Their faces were gaunt, eyes hollow, reflecting the despair that permeated this place. "Lucas," one of them called out, their voice hoarse. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I stepped closer, my heart pounding. "I'm just trying to figure out how to escape," I replied. "Have you guys found anything?" The ex-politician, a man with a weary yet determined look, nodded. "We've all been searching for a way out of this hell. But it's not just about the physical escape. These sentinels, they feed off our pain, our regrets. We have to face them head-on if we ever want to be free." "Face them?" I echoed, my throat tightening. "How do we even begin to do that?" He took a deep breath, as if gathering the courage to share something vital. "It's not easy. Each of us has demons we've been running from. I was a politician, and I made choices that hurt many people. I ended up here because of my own guilt. The only way to confront the Sentinels is to confront our pasts, our mistakes. We need to face our fears." The words hung in the air, heavy and oppressive. I thought of my friend's face, the way he had looked at me just before the accident, the disappointment etched into his features. I had failed him, and that guilt was a constant specter in my mind. "What if I can't face it?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What if it's too much?" Another prisoner chimed in, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It's going to be terrifying, trust me. But you're not alone. We'll face them together. You must remember that the Sentinels are manifestations of our fears. If we stand together, we can fight them off." I looked around at the group, their faces a mix of fear and determination. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps confronting our pasts was the only way to break free from this nightmare. But as I thought about Emily, who had vanished after our last encounter, a sense of urgency gnawed at me. I needed to find her to ensure she's safe. "I can't just sit around and talk about facing fears," I said, my voice rising with conviction. "I have to find Emily. I can't leave her behind." The ex-politician nodded, understanding flashing in his eyes. "Then we need to work quickly. If we're going to confront the Sentinels, we need to do it soon. They grow stronger when we're divided. But first, you need to prepare yourself. You must be ready to face whatever they show you." I felt a shiver run down my spine at the thought. "What if they show me my friend?" I murmured, picturing his disappointed gaze. "What if I can't handle it?" "Then you need to confront that fear now," the ex-politician urged. "Think about what you'll say to him, how you'll feel. You have to be ready to accept that part of your past before you can move forward." Taking a deep breath, I closed my eyes and tried to focus. I pictured my friend, the laughter we shared, the dreams we had for the future. But then the image twisted into the moment of the accident, the screech of tires, the sickening crunch of metal, the silence that followed. I felt the weight of guilt and sorrow crash over me like a wave, nearly drowning me in despair. "Lucas, are you okay?" one of the prisoners asked, concern etched on their face. I opened my eyes slowly, forcing myself to breathe. I need to confront this," I said, my voice shaky but determined. "I need to face my guilt. I can't let it control me anymore." The ex-politician placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "That's the spirit. Let's get everyone together and prepare for what's to come. We'll face the Sentinels, and we'll do it united." As we rallied the others, I felt a flicker of hope igniting within me. If we were to confront the Sentinels, I would have to come to terms with my past. I would have to forgive myself and find the strength to move on, not just for me, but for Emily too. We gathered in a dimly lit room, the flickering shadows creating an eerie atmosphere. I looked around at the determined faces of my fellow prisoners, each carrying their own burdens. "Okay, everyone," I began, my voice steadying. "We need to prepare ourselves for what's coming. Each of us has something we must face. We need to share our fears, what the Sentinels may show us. It's the only way we can stand strong together." A heavy silence enveloped the room as one by one, they began to share their stories. The ex-politician spoke of betrayal, of the people he had let down. The woman with tears in her eyes recounted a life lost due to her reckless decisions. Each story resonated with me, a reminder of the weight we all carried. Finally, it was my turn. "I lost my best friend in an accident," I said, my voice wavering. I was behind the wheel. I can't shake the feeling that it was my fault. I've been haunted by guilt ever since. I don't know if I can face him when the Sentinels come. Lucas, it's okay to feel that way, the ex-politician said softly. But you need to understand that you're not defined by that moment. You need to forgive yourself. I don't know how, I admitted, feeling vulnerable in front of them. Think about what he would want for you, the woman suggested. What do you think he would say if he were here? I closed my eyes, imagining his face again, the way it lit up with laughter. He would tell me to live my life, I whispered. To move forward, not to let the past chain me down. Then that's your answer, the ex-politician affirmed. You need to confront the Sentinels and show them that you've accepted your past. Only then can you find freedom. With a newfound determination, I nodded. Let's do this. I'm ready to face whatever comes our way. As we prepared for the confrontation, I felt the weight of my past still lingering, but I also felt a sense of solidarity with my fellow prisoners. Together, we would face the Sentinels, and together, we would confront our fears. I could only hope that, in doing so, I would find the strength to save Emily, and ultimately find my way back to the light. The shadows of the penitentiary loomed larger as I led the way down the narrow corridor, the flickering lights casting an eerie glow that danced along the cracked walls. Each step echoed in the silence, a haunting reminder of the despair that clung to this forsaken place. My heart raced as I glanced back at the others, their faces a mixture of fear and determination. We were united by a desperate hope, a shared longing for freedom, yet the weight of our pasts threatened to crush us. Lucas, are you sure this is the right way? Whispered Sarah, her voice trembling like the flickering light above us. I nodded, trying to muster confidence despite the pit in my stomach. We need to reach the heart of the penitentiary. If the Sentinels are as powerful there as the rumors say, we have to confront them head-on. My voice was steadier than I felt, fueled by the urgency of our mission. As we moved deeper, the air grew colder, and the whispers began. They slithered through the cracks, curling around our ears, murmuring secrets and fears that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. I could feel my heart pounding louder, each thud a reminder of the stakes. It was more than just my life at risk. Emily's fate weighed heavily on me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that the Sentinels were waiting for us to falter. Keep your focus, I urged the group, glancing back at them. Don't let the whispers get to you. They'll try to break you. I could see the uncertainty in their eyes, mirroring the turmoil roiling within me. Easier said than done, muttered Tom, his voice strained. What if they're right? What if we really don't deserve to escape? His gaze fell to the floor, shame casting a shadow over his features. Tom, listen to me, I said, stepping closer to him. We all have our demons, but we can't let them dictate our fate. We have to fight back. As we reached a heavy door marked with deep scratches, an unsettling chill swept through the corridor. I pushed it open cautiously, revealing a vast chamber filled with darkness, the air thick with an oppressive energy. It was as if the very walls were alive, pulsing with the remnants of despair that had seeped into the stone. Stay together, I instructed as we stepped inside. The room was littered with remnants of past lives, broken furniture, scattered belongings, and the faint scent of decay. It was a graveyard of memories, each item a testament to the souls that had suffered within these walls. Look at this, whispered Sarah, pointing to a series of paintings on the walls. Each canvas depicted horrific scenes, twisted forms writhing in agony. Do you think these were made by the Sentinels? I don't know, I replied, stepping closer to examine the art. But they're a part of this place's history. They show the pain that exists here. Suddenly, a chilling breeze swept through the room, extinguishing the dim light. We huddled together, fear gripping us. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices clawing at our sanity. Can you hear them? Tom said, his voice barely above a whisper. They're mocking us. Focus, I shouted, my voice reverberating off the walls. We can't let them win. In that moment, I felt a surge of resolve. We need to confront them, confront our fears. That's the only way we can weaken their hold on us. Easier said than done, Sarah muttered, her eyes darting nervously around the room. Maybe we can use it against them, I suggested, my mind racing with possibilities. If we face our fears together, maybe we can weaken their power. We gathered in a circle, the oppressive darkness pressing in around us. I could feel the weight of our collective fear, but I knew we had to do this. We need to share our stories. It's time to confront what haunts us. I took a deep breath, summoning the courage to speak. My name is Lucas, and I'm here because of an accident that took my best friend away from me. I've spent every day since then feeling guilty, believing I could have done something to save him. But I know now that I need to forgive myself. I need to let go of that pain. As the words left my lips, I felt a flicker of light within me, a warmth that pushed back against the darkness. The others exchanged hesitant glances before Sarah stepped forward. I'm Sarah. I was imprisoned for something I didn't even do. I let my anger consume me, and I lost everything I cared about. I'm here to confront my rage and find peace. Tom followed suit, his voice shaky but resolute. I'm Tom. I was a politician, and I sold my soul for power. I betrayed those who trusted me. I'm here to face my mistakes and find redemption. One by one, we shared our truths, each confession a thread that wove us closer together. The darkness around us seemed to shift, the whispers growing quieter as we confronted our fears. I could feel the Sentinels' presence lurking, but something was changing. Together, we're stronger, I said, my voice rising with conviction. We need to face them as one. They thrive on our pain, but we can turn that against them. Just as I finished speaking, the air shifted, and the Sentinels emerged from the shadows. They coalesced into monstrous forms, their eyes glowing with malice. A wave of dread washed over me, but I forced myself to stand tall. Remember what we talked about, I shouted, rallying the group. We're not alone in this. We can face them together. The Sentinels hissed, their voices a sinister chorus. You think you can escape your fate? You are bound by your sins. No, I roared, stepping forward. You don't define us anymore. We will not be chained by our pasts. Suddenly, the chamber erupted in chaos as the Sentinels lunged toward us, shadows clawing at our minds. I could feel the weight of my guilt surging, threatening to pull me down. But I held on to my resolve, reminding myself of the warmth I felt when I spoke my truth. Face your fears, I shouted, urging the others to find their strength. Don't let them take you. We stood firm, and as I looked around, I could see the flickers of light sparking in each of my companions. They were fighting their own battles, pushing back against the darkness that sought to consume them. Lucas, Sarah cried, her voice breaking through the chaos. We can do this. Yes, I yelled, feeling the fire of determination igniting within me. We're not alone. We are more than our mistakes. In that moment, I saw the Sentinels hesitate, their forms flickering as our collective resolve pushed back against their darkness. I could feel the power of our unity, the strength we drew from each other. Together, I shouted, raising my arms, we can break free. As our voices rose in a chorus of defiance, the chamber began to shift. The oppressive darkness that had once suffocated us started to recede, revealing the light within. It was as if the very walls were responding to our courage, trembling in the face of our determination. With newfound clarity, I turned to the group. We have to keep going. We can't stop now. We pressed forward, facing the Sentinels together, ready to confront whatever horrors awaited us in the heart of the penitentiary. This was only the beginning. I could feel it in the air. Our fight was far from over, but we were ready to face it, united against the darkness that had held us captive for so long. The air around me felt electric, charged with a mixture of dread and determination as we approached the heart of the penitentiary. The corridor stretched out before us, dark and foreboding, shrouded in an eerie silence that was only broken by the distant echo of our footsteps. My heart raced, pounding in my chest like a war drum, as I glanced at the faces of the other prisoners who had banded together in this desperate quest for freedom. Each of us carried our own burdens, our own regrets, but in that moment, we were united by a singular purpose: to confront the Sentinels and reclaim our lives. As we neared the center of the prison, the shadows seemed to grow thicker, swirling around us like a living entity. I could feel their presence, an oppressive weight that pressed down on my shoulders. Stay close, I whispered, my voice barely breaking the stillness. We can't let them divide us. The others nodded, their eyes reflecting the same fear that gnawed at my insides. We had come too far to turn back now. The memories of our pasts haunted each of us, but we had decided to face our demons head on. It was time to confront the horrors that lurked in the dark corners of our minds. Suddenly, a low growl reverberated through the corridor, causing us to freeze in place. I could feel the chill of terror creeping up my spine. "They're here," I breathed, my voice trembling slightly. I glanced at the others, and their expressions mirrored my own fear. We could see the shadows shifting, gathering together, forming shapes that were all too familiar. "Remember what we discussed?" a tall man named Marcus said, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "We need to face them together. Don't let them isolate you." As if on cue, the Sentinels emerged from the darkness, their forms twisting and contorting, shifting like smoke. Their eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, piercing through the gloom with a malevolence that made my heart race. I could feel their gaze upon me, probing, seeking out my deepest fears. I clenched my fists, trying to push the terror down, focusing on the presence of my fellow prisoners around me. "Lucas," a voice broke through my thoughts. It was Emily. I turned to her, and her expression was fierce, yet vulnerable. "We can do this. We've come too far to let them win." "Yeah," I managed to say, though my voice felt small in the faces of the impending doom. "We're not alone." But as we stood together, the Sentinels began to advance, their forms becoming more defined, more terrifying. I could hear whispers echoing in my mind, taunting me, dredging up memories I had tried so hard to bury. Images of my friend's face, twisted in agony, flashed before me, and I felt the weight of guilt crash over me like a tidal wave. "Lucas," Emily's voice pulled me back to the present. "Focus. They feed off our fear. We can't let them get to us." I nodded, struggling to shake off the visions that threatened to ensnare me. "You're right," I said, my voice gaining strength. "I can't let them control me." With that thought, I took a step forward, drawing upon the collective strength of the group. We formed a tight circle, and I could feel the warmth of solidarity radiating between us. "We face them together," I declared, my voice growing louder, more resolute. "We will not let them take us." The Sentinels shrieked in response, a cacophony of sound that echoed through the hall, shaking the very walls of the prison. Their forms writhed and twisted, becoming more chaotic, and I felt my heart racing as they closed in on us. But I stood tall, refusing to back down. "Let's show them our strength," Marcus shouted, his voice booming like thunder. The others rallied around him, and I felt a surge of hope. We were not just prisoners, we were warriors, battling for our lives and our freedom. As we prepared for the confrontation, I took a deep breath, summoning all the courage I could muster. "No more fear," I whispered to myself, repeating it like a mantra. The Sentinels lunged at us, their claws outstretched, and in that moment, I felt an overwhelming rush of adrenaline. "Together," I shouted, and we charged forward as one, our collective resolve countering the darkness that threatened to engulf us. The battle began in a flurry of movement, a chaotic dance of shadows and light. I could feel the weight of their presence pressing down on me, but I pushed through, focusing on the warmth of my companions. I swung my fists, connecting with the darkness, as we fought back against the Sentinels, refusing to let them consume us. In the midst of the chaos, I caught a glimpse of Emily, her fierce determination shining through the darkness. "Lucas," she called out, her voice cutting through the noise. "We can't let them win. Remember what we've learned." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest as I pushed past the fear that had threatened to swallow me whole. "We have to face our fears," I shouted back, my voice echoing in the turmoil. "That's the only way to defeat them." As I fought, I felt the shadows trying to pull me down, tugging at my thoughts, reminding me of my past mistakes. But I refused to let them take control. "I forgive myself," I yelled, feeling the words resonate within me. "I won't be a prisoner of my guilt any longer." The Sentinels hesitated, their forms flickering as if my declaration had struck a chord. I saw the uncertainty in their eyes, and it filled me with newfound strength. "We will not be defined by our pasts," I cried, rallying the others. "We are more than our mistakes." At that moment, something shifted in the air. The Sentinels shrieked in fury, their forms writhing as if they were being pulled apart. "They're feeding off our pain," I realized, the clarity washing over me like a cleansing wave. "We have to show them our strength." With a fierce roar, we united our voices, chanting in unison, "We are not afraid. We are not alone." The sound reverberated through the hall, growing louder and more powerful. I felt the energy surge around us, a bright light pushing back against the shadows. As the Sentinels recoiled, I could see a glimmer of hope in my companion's eyes. "Now!" I shouted, and we surged forward together, determined to break free from the chains of fear that had bound us for so long. But just as we pressed on, I felt a sudden pull, a force dragging me back towards the darkness. I stumbled, my heart racing as I fought against it, but the shadows whispered my name, calling me back to my deepest regrets. I gasped as I faced the image of my friend once more, his face twisted in pain. "Lucas," Emily's voice broke through, her presence grounding me. "Don't look back. You have to confront it. Remember what you said. We can't let them take us." With a surge of determination, I met my friend's gaze. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words escaping my lips like a prayer. "I'm so sorry for what happened. I never meant for this to happen. I forgive myself." As those words left my mouth, the shadows writhed in agony, their forms flickering as if my acceptance had weakened their hold. I felt the chains of guilt shatter, freeing me from the weight of my past. The Sentinels screamed, a cacophony of rage and despair, their forms collapsing around us. I turned back to my companions, who were now rallying behind me. "Let's finish this!" I shouted, my voice ringing with newfound power. And together we charged forward one last time, ready to confront whatever darkness lay ahead.